Hi, so in this video we're going to be looking at something really interesting. This is a new plugin from a company called MAAT, and it's called the Phi-Def, and it's really unusual and different. This is based on a whole bunch of science that's been done about the brain and the way it perceives sound. And it's a psychoacoustic effect, but it's a different one than we're used to hearing. It's a lot less obvious, but it works on the brain in a kind of pre-thinking way, on more of a kind of emotional level. So I know this sounds like snake oil, but they've done actual research on this. They've done brain scans that show that actually when you turn off and on this process, the brain scans look different. So it's clearly having an effect on your brain. When I heard about how it works, I thought this is kind of what analog gear does. So the way it works is that it adds noise to the signal, but it's not noise as we know it. It's not like some static noise floor or some just shaped static noise. It's noise which is dynamic and nonlinear noise that follows the input signal and changes its amplitude and frequency content based on the audio material. It's quite enough behind the audio material that it's masked and you can't actually hear it as noise even if you listen very closely. But the brain, clearly from the brain scans, does perceive it. Because when I first switched it on, I thought, I'm not sure what this is doing. But after I did that, I switched it on and just forgot about it and just started, listening to the music or mixing the music, and then I switched it off. Then I noticed the difference because my brain had become accustomed to the difference and it noticed it when I turned it off. And to me, the best way to describe it is it just makes the music sound nicer on a kind of emotional level. It's not an obvious saturation effect or obvious thickening effect. But what it appears to do, looking at the science behind it, is that that noise content draws the brain to it. It makes the brain listen more. And so it's a kind of pre-thinking thing. It's more of a emotional, part of the brain that is drawn to and interested in the sound, in the quality of the sound, appears to be how it works. And that could explain why to me and other people that have been using this plugin, it has the effect of just like, it just makes the music feel nicer. I just like it better with it on. I turn it off and I miss it every day. It's just missing something that I liked, but kind of hard to describe. So I would say that I use this in mastering on maybe 70% of my mastering, maybe a bit more than that, 80% maybe. So I hope you're going to find this interesting and useful. It's a kind of an unusual one, but I'm finding it really great and really using it a lot. I've just used it on a Chet Baker recording that I've been remastering, and it definitely, to me, added something I liked. So before we get started, if you can subscribe and like the video and ring the bell, that's really helpful to me and really appreciated. And so let's have a look. So here we are with the MAAT Phi-Def plugin. Now this is an enhancement plugin, and I'll try to describe how it affects the sound to my ears. I wouldn't say improves everything, but I would say it improves many things. Most things I find can benefit from it. So I will turn it on, and like with anything in mastering or mixing, but particularly in mastering, if I'm not sure there's an improvement, I take it out. Because things in mastering can be quite subtle, and you can easily just, talk yourself into thinking something's better, and is it really better? So I always ask myself, is this really improving it? If I've got any doubts, it's out. So as soon as I put this on, I'm asking myself that question. And most of the time, I end up leaving it on and using it. And sometimes it has quite a strong effect, and other times less so. It just depends on the material. So this is a segment of music with vocals, and I'm going to play a bit of instrumental later on. And to my ears, it really makes a real positive difference to this music. And the algorithm varies. There are 4 different algorithms. This, I believe, is the same as the first one, but less of it. So they are quite complex algorithms that follow the signal, and you'll hear, I'll do a null test so you can hear what it does a bit later on. To my ears, the 2 things that I hear right away are the depth. And what I mean by depth, because that word can mean many different things to different people, what I mean when I use the word depth is the distance between the instruments that are near you in a mix and the ones that are further back in the sound stage. So if you're using headphones, you're not going to hear this, but if you've got good speakers set up correctly, you can hear on a lot of music, if it's mixed to have any kind of depth, you'll hear this distance between the things that are near you and the things that are further back. And the reverb creates a sound of a place, and that has a front to back depth, a size to it, and you can hear all of that quite clearly with a good set of speakers. And this plugins, one of the things it does is it defines that to my ears, and it solidifies it so that the things that are further back particularly seem to get more defined as being further back and more solidity to them in that 3D space. So the other thing I hear is in the texture. And in this particular piece of music I'm going to play in a minute, we've got a vocal, and I hear a real enhancement to the texture of the sound of the vocal. Again, it's not, if you're looking for specifics of like, oh, it does this to the top end or it does that to the dynamic range or something like that, you're going to miss what it does. Just concentrate on how it makes you feel, about the enjoyment of the sound. This is how it has an effect. And I also find it's easier to hear it when it's been on for a bit and then you take it out than to just switch it in and out. It takes a little while for the brain to kind of adjust to it, and then you take it out and then you hear the difference. So I'm going to play through this once with it in, and then when it loops I'm going to take it out, and then once that's been done I'll bring it in and out a couple of times. So let's start with it in and have a listen.
They could call in the wee small hours of the morning. That's the time you miss them most of all. They could call in the wee small hours of the morning. That's the time you miss them most of all. They could call in the wee small hours of the morning. That's the time you miss them most of all. They could call in the wee small hours of the morning. That's the time you miss them most of all. They could call in the wee small hours of the morning. That's the time you miss them most of all. They could call in the wee small hours of the morning. That's the time you miss them most of all.
So I don't know how well you can hear this on YouTube, but to my ears the effect it's having on the vocal is really nice. It just, it just has this kind of pleasure thing about it. When I bring it in, I just get more involved. The vocals have more of an effect. It's almost like I can hear, the hairs on the back of my neck go up more with it in than with it not in. It's a subtle thing, but to me, it really does enhance this voice and this piece of music. And I find it's the same with other music that it works well on. When you key into what it's doing, you just have to have it in. And then some other music, just doesn't have an effect, or the effect isn't one that improves it. So you just have to try it and listen, like any other kind of finishing effects you use in mastering something. So as I said, there are these different algorithms. I'm going to try those in a minute, but first I think I'm going to play something a bit further on here. And on this one, have a listen to the front to back depth on this when I take it in and out.
In the wee small hour.
So hopefully you could hear that. To me, it just opened out the back end of the mix. It's not like it actually added depth, because there's already depth there, but it just solidified it. It made that depth more defined, more kind of real, especially in the more distant sounding things. So to me, on this piece of music, like, no question about it, I would have this on there. Like, once you hear it with it on there, there's no way you're going to not have it. That's my view on this particular piece of music. But as I said, with some pieces of music, I turn it on and it's like, nah, it's not doing anything particular. And I have this kind of rule anyway, that if it's, like I said, if it's not doing anything definite, I take it out. So what I'm going to do now is just, I'm going to play switch to some of the other algorithms so you can hear the difference. So I didn't try that second one because it's just the same as the first one, but less of it. So hopefully you could hear the difference between those. It's hard to describe the difference, but to my ears, it's a very definite difference. And you might even prefer some of the other ones on this piece of music, but I liked this one. So let's now turn to having a look at some null tests, just so you can hear exactly what this is doing. Okay, so here what I've done here is I've taken a piece of music. It's a piece of instrumental music with a guitar solo going on, and you can hear the kind of how the guitar solo goes, and then you can kind of reference that and the other parts of the music to the null tested Phi-Def. So I've taken each of the algorithms, and what I've got here for each of them is the music, original music with the plugin on it, and then here it is, I've done a null test and recorded the result of that, so you can hear, what you hear is just what the plugin is doing. So first I'm going to play this with just as it is with the plugin on it, and then I'll play the same segment with the null test. test. So that's one of the four algorithms, the one called Trukin. So you can hear that it's following the music and it's changing its frequency content depending on the frequency of the music, which is interesting. Now, I've boosted the level a lot. I mean, the level is very low when you actually use the plugin, nothing like that. So you're not going to be able to hear it as a thing when you listen to it as a plugin. It just becomes part of the signal. But I've boosted this up so you can hear it. Now here's the next algorithm. Again, I'm going to play the track and then I'm going to play the null test so you can hear the difference between algorithms. And I'll flip back and forth between the algorithms a little bit, but I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time doing that, just to give you an idea. Now that's interesting to me because that's picking up a lot more on the percussive aspects than the first one was. The first one seemed to be picking up more on the guitar. So let's listen to this one. And I'm going to just jump around between them now, the actual null test. Really different. And now this is the last of the four algorithms. Again, really different. Going to listen to the first one again just to compare to those ones. And this one again, I think, as well. So you can hear each one sounds different. I mean, I'm not going to spend ages listening to it because it's just not important to hear, I don't think, exactly what each one's doing, but just the fact that they're each doing something different in terms of how the noise is following the signal and or generated from the signal, however they do it. I have no idea how it works behind the scenes. So that's what's going on, and it's an interesting thing I find because I've always wondered, like with analog equipment, I suspect that the actual change in sound, the non-linearities within the change in the sound of the analog gear, is probably changing and shifting a lot. It's probably really complicated. Not just a thing where you can just write into an algorithm, oh, it does this to everything. No, I have a feeling it's very complex and changing continuously. And I know that some of the plugins these days do actually implement that level of complexity in terms of how they react, which is why they're sounding more and more like something that moves and lives with the music. It's kind of a living, breathing entity that reacts to the music. And I think that's what this is doing. It's bringing that element to the sound. So I hope you found this useful. If you liked the sound of it on that piece of music, not what we were doing just now with these null tests, but that piece of music before, I would encourage you to try the demo and try it on various different pieces of music and try the different algorithms and see what you think. Personally, I'm finding it incredibly useful and I'm using it on loads of mastering and in mixes. Putting it on individual instruments, I find, often enhances it on that individual instrument, and if you got it on several, it kind of adds up over the whole mix as something that really adds just a really beautiful and kind of involving feeling about the instrument. So I hope you found this useful, and if you did, please do give the video a like and ring the bell and subscribe, and that's really helpful to me. And hope to see you next time.